goodness, this is so exciting to be back. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, lots changed in a year. When I was here last year, I wasn't even, working back in Canada yet. So I'm a physical example of how launch is attracting Canadians back home. I am currently in the process of moving my family back from the UK after 17 years there to Canada because I've been waiting so long for this moment to arrive, and it's actually here now. So it is 100% real. The introduction was I wear two hats. I am part of MDA Space. I am on secondment over to Maritime Launch Services. And again, that's another physical example of launch and how important it is. So Canada's largest space company, MDA Space, late last year decided, wait a minute, we can see where this is going. We can see how launch plays a critical piece of our puzzle for growing as MDA Space. And they invested in Maritime Launch Services money, but also a person. I was that person, so that's me. I'm here, I'm back. After 10 years running a spaceport in the UK, creating sovereign launch capability in the UK. So a few war wounds, I'm not gonna lie, but a lot of lessons learned. So let's get started here. Yeah, I really want us to take a minute here because I think we've heard a lot this morning already, and I think we need to reframe how we're thinking of launch, how we're thinking of spaceports, and how we're thinking of rockets. Today, launch to me isn't just about a capability, it's not just a product, it's not just like that stamp of, hey, you're in a cool club now, you can launch to space. No, it is a piece of foundational, critical national infrastructure. We need to think of spaceports and of launch as we would of any other port, of a marine port, of an airport, of a train station. It moves goods and services, people and products around, and it's critical to how we operate as a country. And I think we really need to start to think about that. So when you're having dinner party conversations and you're talking, everybody gets excited when you say you work in space, don't they? And then you start talking about rockets and they get even more excited. Well, we need to start to explain why that's important in a bit of a different way. I like to use an analogy. This works really well, so I'm going to give you this actually. Think of the exploration that happened from Europe over to North America. And some of you might have heard this analogy from me before, and I will put the kind of hideous side of colonialism to one side right now. But if you think of what happened there, to go and see what was out there, but also to bring back all those new resources, you needed government support for that, you needed private investment, you needed ports, and you needed ships. And the countries that got that right, I mean, we're still living it today. They controlled what was happening on this planet. That's what we're talking about here. That is what now we're saying we're about to do in space. Because launch itself isn't just the prize. Access to space is going to define our entire future as a country for two ways I see at the minute. Number one, so we talked about this morning, we've heard a few times, the orbital economy is about to be worth trillions. We need to be able to access how we're able to get to that. Right now, for MDA, for an example, we have all this amazing capability in Canada, but we're relying on our friends to the south a lot of the time to launch that capability. And geopolitical tensions recently have changed things, but that's not a recent thing. We're talking, and you might have seen on the news last week, CBC ran a report about RadarSat-2. The Americans decided, hey, we actually might not want to launch this, you have to look elsewhere. At any point, our capability, we rely so much on others to put our capability into space and to access space. That's no longer is okay. And we need to capture that market here. And then the second example is from a national security perspective. I took a pause between my last spaceport and this spaceport because I wanted to go and understand more about the industry. And I worked for a company called Slingshot Aerospace, which did space domain awareness, space situational awareness, and wow, it's scary, guys. It is like the real deal is happening out there. It's not a joke. We could see it happening. We could see some pretty scary stuff happening in space. People taking out really fundamental critical comms satellites that would then, go on to hurt our forces overseas, hurt people that we love over, in our own countries. So it really brought home to me how critical it is to be able to control and replace our assets in space. Not only replace them, right now it could take a week, if not longer, to replace an asset in space. We're talking about responsive launch capability that could replace a satellite in days. that's great. We can get our capability back in space, but also it acts as a deterrent for the future too. So both those things, access to the new orbital economy, but also from a national security perspective. I know I'm probably singing, preaching to the choir here. I know you guys all know this, but I think we need to continue to reframe that how important that this actually is to get this infrastructure into Canada. All right, but how do I even know this? So I ran a spaceport. I built it from the ground up with an amazing team of people over in the UK. We brought a rocket from the US, Virgin Orbit, Launcher 1 rocket over to bring the UK its first ever launch in 2023. And it was an amazing experience. It took 10 years to do it, but you had everybody working towards that same mission. And the launch aside, the catalyst that created for everything else, from supply chain development to skills development, human capital development, tech transfer, I can go on and on and on. Virgin Orbit went bust, but if you go to the site today, you'll see almost 15 space companies at that location. The parking lot is full still. And there's no launch happening right now. That is the power of launch to attract business, to attract talent to a very rural part of the world. Again, where this spaceport is a rural location, and we were still able to attract that level of business investment and talent to the site. So it is incredible what sovereign launch, and when I say sovereign launch, I mean sovereign launch from the soil. Yes, we had an American rocket, but it still was able to help us create all that additional activity. But I actually want to get a little bit emotional here. I think I'm the first female speaker up here, so we're going to switch it up a bit. I think it's important to talk about what it feels like to launch from your own soil. Any of you that were at the Artemis 2 launch, you probably know what I'm talking about, that feeling that you get, because you don't just hear it, you feel it. And when you launch from your own soil, it is an incredible feeling. Everything goes away. The belief, all that's left is belief. Not just the people working on it, but your entire country. The patriotism that it brings to your country is absolutely incredible. I'm talking about the UK, which are not the most patriotic bunch at the moment. I can imagine what it will feel like in Canada. So I just want you to keep that in you, because that's the intrinsic motivation that we all need to continue on this journey, because it is not easy. It brings that belief in, and magic happens from it. But there are some threats, and this is from me at bringing those lessons learned, but also from my first few months back in Canada working on this new spaceport. And these are some of the things that I've noticed as threats to achieving that feeling, as well as all that economic activity and national security activity as well. These risks are real. First of all, of course, there's technical risks. I'm going to kind of park that to one side. You guys will figure that out, I'm sure. But of course it is. I think we do need to get comfortable with failure. Our rocket that went off from Cornwall, it reached space, awesome, we were really excited. That moment, that feeling that we had was suddenly then replaced by a feeling of absolute despair when we realized that the satellite payloads didn't get to where they needed to be, and that the mission was actually a failure. So we need to get comfortable with that. That is what happens when you launch rockets, they fail. And so understanding that that's just part of the process, and we need to get back up and go again, I think set that in your mind. There are some external threats going on right now. Somebody mentioned this morning, the world's aware of what we're doing here. That's a good thing, but also it is a bad thing. I wouldn't want to say it, but there's probably people in this room that maybe don't wish us the best. This is real. That is what is happening right now in space. I think pretending that it's not is silly of us. It's a contested domain, and people realize that everybody needs to get up there somehow from somewhere. So I think we need to keep our eyes really open on this, because we are not the only ones, watching Canada create sovereign launch capability. And that brings me on to some of these internal risks, something that I've really noticed. I put this picture up here specifically. I took this picture up when I went to go see Spaceport Nova Scotia for the first time in January, and this is the existing launch pad that's been there for a while. This went out on the news last week, saying, our D&D investment that we had into the site, or the lease of the pad, not investment, it's a revenue generation for us. $200 million, just to build one concrete pad. That's very damaging, not just for us, but for this entire industry, for the media, for anybody public online, to see that misinformation going out and to not believe in it, because we are going to be needing to come together as a group, and we may not all agree all the time on everything, but we need to work in the same direction. We cannot look fragmented on this, because right now we have political alignment, but that's not always going to be the case. So we need to back up, what each other are doing and move in that same direction, because this image, went up on social media. There are, nefarious actors on social media that push it out even broader and try and cause discourse on purpose that will not just not benefit us, but it will not benefit this entire room. So let's be very aware that this is actually going on right now. So I think from across everything that we're doing, from the building of these incredible engines and rockets to the regulatory approach, we have to look as one team. We really do. So that is basically my call to action here, guys. We need to move forward together. In Nova Scotia, what we're doing with Spaceport Nova Scotia is we're operating an airport model where we'll have multiple launch pads that are being built right now. I was going to come and show you all the stuff that we're doing, but you'll see in the next few weeks, you'll see it all coming out. It's on site now, multiple launch pads. We'll have multiple operators from all around the world. Of course, we are there to support the Canadian rocket companies that are building. Of course, we'll always be there to enable them to get to space. But in the meantime, we need to expedite capability as well. So bringing in rockets from around the world that have heritage and cadence and sustained kind of payload capability that we can bring in sooner rather than later to help us test, everything we're doing, all our systems and processes, our regulatory approach, our range management systems, everything that we're doing on site, we want to test and put it through its paces. So that's what we're doing. This airport model will be working with multiple operators, and we hope everybody will benefit from that. Because that's just it. In that analogy I started with, there is room for more than one ship here. There's room for multiple rockets. There is a backlog of payloads that need to get to space, and that's not stopping. There are countries around this world that are looking for a trusted alternative to get to space. They cannot launch from their home soil. They are not interested in working with the same old players. They want a country to come and launch from that they can trust. So we not only have backlog here in Canada, we have international payloads looking for a way to get to space. There is enough market out there for multiple ships. There's also probably enough market for multiple ports as well. So we don't have to agree on everything, but I really, really want us to think about how we move forward together. We have to stop kind of looking left and right and stop getting in our own way, because there are much scarier people out there right now that are hoping that's what we do, that we trip ourselves up, and they will leverage that. So that's my call here, is Canada strong, but let's do that together. Thank you very much.